Namaste everyone, my name is Vaishali Shah. You're welcome to my session on hinduscriptures.com. Today we have a very special guest on our page and you are going to learn a lot about Hindu culture from someone who doesn't come from this background or neither is from this country. So I welcome Stephen Knapp here. He is an author. He is also a chairman of Krishna Temple in Detroit. He is Krishna devotee and his devotional name is, spiritual name rather, is Sri Nandanandana ji. Stephen Knapp ji, namaskar. How are you doing today?
I'm doing
For
great.
you it is good morning, right?
Thank you very much. And good evening to you.
So Prabhuji, let's start our session with one prayer, whichever prayer you would like to say. Today, I would like you to recite a prayer for us.
Om Jnanatir Mandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chakshur and Militam Jaina Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha.
So Prabhuji, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you.
But the purpose of inviting you today for our show is that I want my Indian audience to know something about your journey, how you started, how you lived, how you got into this practice, and then on top of that, you have written so many books. So I think it would be nice if you slowly take us, through your journey from the beginning. And without introduction, we would like to hear whatever you have gone through, knowing the Hindu culture.
Well, the beginning probably started back when I was 7 years old. And back when I didn't know anything about spirituality or anything like that, when I was 7 years old, I looked around and I thought, I don't even like being here. And if I ever get a chance, I want to make sure I don't come back. So I already had a sense that, I don't belong here. I'm not from this world. There's another place I need to be. But, after a while, you forget all that. You get involved in all kinds of things in life and everything. But then later on, I was a musician. And as a musician, you hang out with other, avant-garde people, you might say. So you're very creative. We're, partying and having a good time. But then we're also, sometimes we sit down and talk about, okay, where do we really fit into this world? What makes sense? So after a while, when I was about 18, 19, I decided, something, I got to put this guitar down. I got to find out some answers. I got to figure out, what am I doing here? What's the purpose of life? And, I'm here for some reason. I better find out. And so that same question back when I was 7 years old, what am I doing here? How can I get out of here? Kind of came back to haunt me. And I had to put my guitar down for a while and just start reading, just start studying and finding out some answers. Of course, I was born and raised a Christian. So best thing to do is start with the Bible. So I read the Bible from cover to cover, which is not necessarily easy reading, but it had a lot of wisdom, a lot of insight, but it still didn't really answer the questions that I had. So with that, I started reading everything. I didn't know where to begin, so I started reading everything. I was studying Egyptology, Judaism, the Eastern teachings, witchcraft, I Ching, Tarot, you name it. If it had any insight at all, I would try to study it and sometimes utilize it in my life. And but then finally, because there was a friend of mine and we were kind of like looking into this together, but he went up to Toronto for a weekend one time and he ran into the Iskcon devotees, the Hare Krishnas, on the streets of Toronto. And they gave him a brochure and everything. And so he comes back and we're both looking at it. And we're looking at the books that they had to offer at the time. And this was back in about 1970, 71. And then I look at this one book called Bhagavad-Gita. And he says, yeah, that's kind of like the Hindu Bible. I'm going like, that's what I want to know. That's what I want, because I was interested in finding out, different cultures, concept of God, who we are, soul, all these different things. So, okay, this is what I want. I want to know, what is the Hindu concept of all these different things that were supposed to be in this Bhagavad Gita. So then, and that was the old Bhagavad Gita, a little blue book by
Yeah.
Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And so I read that. And the more I read, it's like, wow, these are the answers to the questions I've had all this time that I couldn't find answers to in any other culture or any other religion. So, by the time I got done with Bhagavad-Gita, I realized two things: how fallen I was from, being on a true spiritual path, but also I got to get more of this. Whatever this is in Bhagavad-Gita, I got to get more. So then I went on to study things like the Upanishads, Manu Samhita, the, different Vedanta Sutras, and then some of the Puranas as well. And then about 6 months later, I'm doing all this studying, and my friends decided that, because I was living in a small town called Buchanan, Michigan, population of only about 5,000, so pretty small. And they said, we got to get out of here. We got to go someplace else. So we all made a plan, 4 of us, to go out west. First, we went to Phoenix. That didn't work out so well. Then we went to Denver, Colorado. And we had some friends there. We stayed with them. We got a place to stay. And then I met the devotees on the streets. And so they gave me a card. There was going to be a festival coming up, and this is where their temple is. So then I managed to go to the temple, and it was like, wow, because I remember the first time I went to the temple, and I still had my books with me, like the Bhagavad-Gita and things like that, Sri Upanishad and different books on Krishna. And so when I went to the temple, it was like they had the program, they had a lecture, all that was great. Then they had the prasadam feast, which I loved because I had just turned vegetarian several months before. So I really loved that. But then they took me into a back room. This is before they had a big temple room, and they had a back room where the deities were. And so I remember watching the arti to the Jagannath deities.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking to myself, isn't this idol worship? Shouldn't I be worried about this? And then I thought, but I'm feeling so good. I don't care. I was just feeling so good, like, old samskaras coming back, like this is something I had been through before in a previous life. And by the time I came out of there, it was nighttime. But by the time I came out of there, the whole world just looked completely different. The night was out, the stars were out, and I was driving back, and back to where I was living at the time, and then George Harrison's song "My Sweet Lord" comes on the radio, and I'm telling you, it was synchronicity. It was just put me in a totally different world altogether. And then I got more serious about reading, the Bhagavad-Gita and other books that they had available. But I was really dedicated to my music, so it was another 3-4 years trying to make it in music before I really started to think that, something, maybe it's time that I should just join the ashram. So I joined the ashram in 75. Wow. And started to, you learn about, the temple discipline, the etiquette, the how to do arti, how to do different things and in service to the deities and everything. And that really kind of spawned my energy into, really getting into the spiritual path, because the spiritual path is not just a means of, advancing spiritually, but it's a means of purifying, or what I'd rather say is spiritualizing your consciousness, so that you begin to see the spiritual dimension which exists all around you. And as that began to happen, I also approached my guru at the time, which was A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, for initiation. So I sent him a letter, and the next year, in 1976, it was when I finally got initiated and was given the name Sri Nandanandana. And,
so did you meet him? Did you get a chance to meet Prabhupada?
I saw him several times.
Lovely.
Actually, I saw him several times before I joined the ashram. So in some ways, when I was trying to be a musician and everything, I was able to follow him around. I was just, staying in my van. So I saw him in San Francisco, Los Angeles, San Diego. Then later on, I saw him in Chicago, New Vrindavan, West Virginia. Then just before I joined the ashram, I saw him in Denver. I went back to Denver. He was there. And that convinced me, okay, time to join the ashram. So then I went home, finished up my business, and came back and joined the temple in Denver, Colorado. And so then I got initiated by him in 1976. And from there, just kept moving forward. But it was 10 years later, 1986, when I decided that, I would really like to explain this knowledge to other Westerners.
Right.
And with that, I started writing my first book. I thought maybe I'll write a fiction book, But when I tried to write a fiction book, my mind just wasn't going anywhere. And I thought, well, instead of writing fiction, why not write nonfiction? And then all of a sudden, bam, all this stuff, all these ideas started coming into my consciousness. And then I just started, formulating different books. Like the first one was The Secret Teachings of the Vedas, because everybody, Westerners especially, they like to know something secret.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So I named my book that way. And I explained it. The writing did two things. It helped me reach people that I otherwise couldn't reach, especially in parts of the world that I would never be going to. But it also helped me explain what the Vedic literature had to offer, because I would say something and then justify it with a verse or a few verses from the Bhagavad-Gita or Bhagavad Purana or something like that, so people could see where this knowledge was coming from. Because when I was first getting involved in, this search for who I am and my spiritual identity and stuff, I would come across a lot of New Age books, you might say.
Right.
And they would say all kinds of stuff without any reference of where this knowledge or where they're coming from. And after a while, it's like, okay, what's the foundation of their thinking? What's the basis of what their thinking is? And they would never say it. They would just come out with all these theories and stuff. But with what I wanted to do was to present something and then give a reference to where it was and what's that thought is based on. And that way, let the Vedic literature speak for themselves. You may or may not like it, but this is what's found in the Vedic literature. And in
so
the
what
Puranas.
was, yeah, so Prabhuji, what was the difference you found in the theories which were coming out in the 70s when the science was getting involved and there were lots and lots of new theories were getting publicized, right? So what was your thought when you were reading that and you were reading Vedic scriptures?
Well, in some ways, it was interesting for the idea of free-flowing thought and concepts about who we are and stuff like that. But it was kind of like a lot of speculation was involved.
Right.
But when you come across the Vedic literature, you could see where the Vedic literature is the root of all these different ideas, such as reincarnation, karma, life after death, all these different things, where you could see that the Vedic literature establishes the root, which goes back thousands of years.
Right.
And it shows, where this is all coming from and how it has expanded and how these New Age people are simply adopting different aspects of what is already existing in the Vedic literature. So in that regard, why not just study the Vedic literature and get to the root of it? So that was kind of the difference I felt when I was studying this stuff, and which I was glad I did. Everything was a stepping stone, so I can't criticize it or anything, but finally it led me to the Vedic literature, and then I was fixed. Then I knew this is what I want. This is what is giving me the information, basically the answers to my questions.
Right.
Because we all have questions, but sometimes we don't know where to answer. And the thing of it is too, is that say like Christianity or some of the other monotheistic religions, if you have too many questions, then you're considered a doubting Thomas. You don't have enough faith in the tradition, or you don't have enough faith in the Bible or the religion or whatever it is. Whereas in the Vedic tradition, it is all questions and answers. You
Right.
look at the Vedanta Sutras, you look at the Upanishads, you look at the Mahabharata, you look at the Puranas. It's all based on questions and answers, which means basically whatever question you have was probably already asked by somebody else. You know,
True.
it's just a matter of finding where that question was asked and what the answers are provided by the ancient rishis of India, and which is now outlined in the Vedic literature. So I love that. I love that. I could ask any question I wanted. It wasn't out of bounds. It was simply a matter of attaining realization. How are you going to become realized if you can't find answers to your questions? And then not only that, but as I found when I joined the ashram, it's not simply a matter of getting answers to your questions, but it's a matter of following the path which spiritualizes your consciousness so that you can actually realize what those answers to the questions are. It's just not a matter of cultivating knowledge, but it's actually a matter of realizing that knowledge and seeing through your own eyes what that perception, what that spiritual perception is. They call it like seeing through the spectacles of knowledge, you know, like these glasses. I take my glasses off and everything's a little blurry. But through Shastra, everything becomes clear. So it's like putting on the spectacles of Shastra through which you can see things clearly, what it is that's happening in life and how you got here, where you're going, and not only where you're going, but where you should be going. And then how to adjust your life so that you can reach the ultimate goal of human life, which is essentially going to the spiritual world.
So how did it change you? How did it change you as well? As in, what changed within you? It's just not in your lifestyle, in your behavior. How this whole knowledge brought change into you? What positivity you got?
Externally, I started, giving up my bad habits.
Okay.
I remember when I started chanting the Hare Krishna mantra on japa beads, I felt this power within me. And I thought, wow, I got this power. I can feel this power. How am I going to direct it? And I said, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to stop smoking.
Oh,
and that was back when I was still a musician. So, when you're around other musicians, you smoke a little bit, you do this, you do that. And so then through the association of going to the temple, this was when I was in Boston before I even joined the temple. Through my association in Boston, the devotees there, I started chanting on a regular basis. I was just chanting 2 to 4 rounds. Each round is 108 beads. So you chant Hare Krishna on each bead, the Hare Krishna mantra. And it gave me a strength, an inner strength that I hadn't had before. And so that's how I applied it. The first thing I said, I'm going to quit smoking altogether. I wasn't smoking that much anyway. But, on the weekends, you get together with your musician friends and stuff. And, one thing leads to another. And so then I just gave it up and I never looked back. So that was one thing that I gave up. Plus I had been a vegetarian since about the time I read the Bhagavad-Gita for the first time. I became vegetarian.
Wow.
Plus that didn't please my mom too much at the time because, I was still living at home. And I remember she said, "Oh, so now what am I supposed to cook for you?" I said, "Well, just anything without meat, that's all." And but then I left home soon after that anyway, so it didn't much matter. And so that was one of the things that happened. And so gradually I started changing my ways, changing my habits.
Right.
And that also frees you from these bad habits, frees you from these lower vibrations, you might say, so that your vibrational level of your consciousness can rise to a higher level. And you can actually begin operating on a higher level of consciousness, higher level of frequency, because that's basically what it is. Spiritual life is a matter of adjusting the frequency level upon which you operate. And as your frequency gets higher, you can also then perceive that which exists on a higher level of reality. In other words, the more spiritual you become, then the more you can perceive that which is spiritual. And that's the whole point of the Vedic tradition, is to raise your consciousness, raise your lifestyle, so that eventually you can perceive and also then begin to enter in to the spiritual dimension which exists all around us. I give the example of radio waves. You know, we have
Yes.
so many radio waves all around us, cell phone waves, television waves, all these radio waves and stuff all around us. We can't see them, we can't taste them, we can't feel them, we can't hear them. But if you have the proper receiver, then there's so many things you can do with them, and so much benefit you can get from them.
True.
So the same thing is the spiritual dimension exists all around us. We're covered over by the material dimension because that's what we're focused on, that's where we're operating. But the more spiritual your consciousness becomes, the frequency level raises, so that then you can begin to also make your consciousness the proper receiver by which you can interact and perceive the higher dimension which exists all around us, and then operate on that level as well. And that's what makes a big difference. And then the thing of it is then it's not like you are trying to change your lifestyle and give up bad habits. It's that you basically no longer even have an attraction to all these bad habits. It naturally changes you. You change according to the level of frequency that you operate on. And so the change is organic, it's natural. It's not something that's forced on you or anything like that. And it's just a matter of how far you want to take it, how deep you want to go with it, and how sincere you are in following the path that is outlined and recommended in the Vedic literature itself. Of course,
But
in this age
Prabhuji,
of...
but for you, it was a full, complete journey. Like you got into fully. But what recommendation do you give to the people who are grihastha, who are still in their regular lives, and they have their jobs and they have their other things? I have seen that in India people are losing their culture, and I don't understand what is so rush about being Western or being modern. So what recommendation would you give it to them from your experience?
Well, don't forget, before I joined the ashram, I was also working and I had a job and stuff like this. And I was also trying to become find my place in the music world and stuff. So, but basically, I just started giving myself time. I started giving myself, in the early days, 1/2 hour at least every day to reading Bhagavad-Gita. 1/2 hour in addition to that to chanting the Hare Krishna mantra on my japa beads. And
Okay.
together with that really started to change my consciousness. So you just give yourself 1 hour a day, 1/2 hour reading, 1/2 hour chanting, which makes it a complete cycle for you to
Right.
begin to uplift your consciousness. And then, of course, if you have more time, then you can give it more time, and but at least start with that much. And after a while, I 1/2 an hour of reading a day wasn't enough. I had to give myself at least 2 hours of reading, because I was so interested in what the Vedic literature had to say, starting with Bhagavad-Gita and other books like that, Vedanta Sutras, Upanishads, things like that. I just had to read more and more because I was just so curious as to getting the answers to my questions and finding out what this knowledge had to offer. And then, of course, I was going to the temple every week on Sundays for the Sunday program. And that was always nice, get a big vegetarian feast or something. And the hard part now is that during this pandemic lockdown, most of the temples are closed. But
True.
you can still do whatever the part of the tradition you can in your own home. And that's one of the unique qualities of the Vedic tradition. The Vedic tradition still promotes individual freedom practically more than any other culture or any other religion that I have found. It's not like you have to have faith in the institution or the church or whatever. You only have to have faith in starting the tradition itself. I mean, things like Shastra, Guru, and Sadhu, these are all tools that you can use to heighten your spiritual progress. It's not like they control you, but they give you the means by which you can decide for yourself how deep you can want to go into this process of cultivating your spiritual knowledge and spiritual perception and spiritual realizations, which is one of the other beautiful things I liked about it, because once again, it gives you the freedom to ask whatever question you want. It gives you the freedom to act or adopt whatever it is that's most suitable for you, and you can go from there. And
so what is your which is your favorite scriptures, and what are the verses which verse is your favorite? I would like you to recite and say something about your favorite verse from whichever scripture you like the most.
Well, my two favorite scriptures, and I've read a lot of them, my two favorite scriptures are Bhagavad-Gita and the Bhagavad Purana. And and I have a few verses here. This is from the Bhagavad-Gita, chapter 18, and I'll read it because I have a hard time memorizing anything. And I often say to people, I write books because I can't remember anything.
Right.
I can accumulate so much knowledge and I can put it into a book form and format it and explain it that way. But the thing of it is, it's like once I write one book, I go on and start writing the next book, I'm already forgetting what I wrote in the previous book.
But that's
like
common with many authors. Once you have written it down, research done, then you just can't remember everything. It's very common.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, actually, because I thought I was starting to think that maybe I'm the one that's got the problem.
No, I'm sure about this.
Well, this is verse 57. One verse I like, which is Chaitasa Sarva Karmani Mae Sanyasa Matpara Buddhi Yogam Upashritra Machitaha Satatam Bhava, which says, in all activities, just depend upon me and work always under my protection. In such devotional service, be fully conscious of me, which basically means that if you're, at least for Krishna Bhaktas, which is what I am, the ultimate rule is always remember Krishna, never forget him. And then you do whatever it takes to always remember Krishna and never forget him. Simple as that. But then it's in the next verse, it says, Ma chitaha savar durgani mat prasada tarishyani ata chetatvam ahankaram na shushasi vinakshasya. I kind of slaughtered that verse a little bit, but if you become conscious of me, you'll pass over all the obstacles of conditioned life by my grace. If, however, you do not work in such consciousness, but act through false ego, not hearing me, you will be lost. So this is one of the examples from the Bhagavad-Gita, that if we take the advice of Lord Krishna, or take the advice from Bhagavad-Gita, we will know what to do and how to do it, and what best to do in that regard. If we ignore it, if we ignore the tradition, then naturally we'll be lost. Which, before I read the next verse, there's a story of how one wealthy Indian girl in Delhi, she was saving her money so she could find the best yoga teacher available. And her idea was to save her money and go to California and find the best yoga teacher she could find. But meanwhile, she doesn't understand that us Westerners are also saving our money so that we can go to India to find the best yoga teachers available. Because the fact of the matter is, why does she want to go to California? Did yoga start in California? I don't think so.
No.
She could look in her own backyard in India to find the best yoga teachers available. So this is the whole point. You just follow, if you want to follow the tradition is right there in a dynamic way in India. All you have to do is look at your tradition and follow whatever aspect you want to follow, and begin to apply it to your lives, and you can develop yourself like that. Here's another verse. This is verse 65. Manmana bhava mad bhakto mad yaji mam namaskuru mam evashyasi satyamte pratyajane prayosime, which says, always think of me and become my devotee. Worship me and offer your homage unto me. Thus you will come to me without fail. I promise you this because you are my very dear friend. So in that regard, who's not a friend of Krishna? If Krishna is the supreme being, or one aspect of the supreme being, then we're all parts and parcels of the supreme being in that way. So
Yes.
surely he wants to help us come to the spiritual world. So he's giving so much knowledge in this way so that we can attain the spiritual dimension. And he gives us what we lack and preserves what we have. That's in another verse of Bhagavad-Gita. So all we have to do is show a little endeavor, and he will also, like it says, for every step we come towards him, he comes 10 or even 100 steps towards us. So it's just a matter of realizing that compassionate nature. Krishna is not a jealous God. He is all loving. That's one of the differences I also liked in the Vedic tradition. Krishna is the God of love. And so he's in that loving nature, naturally, he'll want to help us reach him as best he can. It's not like, oh, if we don't do this, if we don't do that, he's going to cast a curse on us or something like that. He just leaves it up to us. And this is one of the things about the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna explains all this different levels of knowledge, the science of the soul, the science of acting in the material world, where we've come from and stuff. And then at the end, he says to Arjuna, so now I've explained all this to you. You simply make up your own mind, decide what you want to do. He's not forcing anybody to do anything, but he's giving us the knowledge to make up our own mind. So in this other verse, Sarva Dharmam Parityajya Mamekam Saranam Vraja Aham Tvam Sarvas Papebhyo Mokshashishame Mahasuchaha, which says, abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. I shall deliver you. I shall protect you from all sinful reaction. Do not fear. Yeah, what's easier than that? And that's one of the things is that I found, especially when I'm touring India, and I've been to India on 24 separate trips.
Oh.
I've been in every state of India except Meghalaya, Tripura, and Mizoram. So I've been all over, and I've given hundreds of lectures there. And one of the things that people say is that, people say that Hinduism is so complicated, and there's so many gods and you don't know what to do. But, all you have to do is surrender to this person in our religion, surrender to this person or that person, and you're saved. But wait a minute. Krishna's saying the same thing right here. All you have to do is abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. I shall deliver you from all sinful reaction. Do not fear. What could be easier than that? Hindus need to know their scripture well enough that when somebody begins to say that, oh, Hinduism is so complicated, hey, right here, it's very simple. It's very simply said. It just says, I shall deliver you, just surrender unto me. Then the next step is to learn how to surrender, how to engage. And in this case, the whole process is based on bhakti yoga. So for me, I'm a bhakti yogi. So it's very straightforward how to engage in bhakti yoga. Then everything becomes very clear, very easy, and it's no big deal. So Hindus in general need to know their scripture well enough so that they can also understand how easy it is. It's not that difficult. And that's why I present also different articles on my website so that people can read the website and read
Prabhuji,
the
I want
articles.
to say one thing. When I started my research 15 years back, you were one of those initial, authors who I read very, very seriously. That
Really?
time I remember reading every corner of your website. I must have read everything you have written. That was around 13, 14 years back when I was, searching the data. And I remember that time also I had connected with you and you had allowed me to post few articles from your website to my website. I don't remember I don't know whether you remember it or not. Do you?
I don't remember that, but because I get a lot of requests of people that want to use my articles and stuff,
Yes.
which is, I find anything on my website, which by the way is www.stephen-knapp.com. Anybody can use anything on my website. That's why they're there, to spread the information more freely. And it's like this.
What did you do then after all these years? In last 20 years, where did you live? What did you do? I just want to know more about your everyday life.
Well, basically, I came to Detroit after a while, and somehow I got stuck in Detroit, and which is a nice temple. It's a temple located in what's called the Fisher Mansion. It's an old mansion that was built by Lawrence Fisher, who was the part of the auto industry. Body by Fisher used to make the chassis of the different cars at the time. And Ambarish, Alfred Ford, was the one that helped purchase that building. And so somehow I came here and got kind of like involved, where I'm still the chairman of the board here at the Krishna temple, and been here ever since. But during that time, I started writing books, which became kind of a cottage industry, really. And I've written now, what is it? I can't even remember. It's close to 37 books, paperback books, and an additional 12, I think, Kindle ebooks. So almost 50 books altogether. And that's basically how I reach people, through that area and through my website. And through that time also, I've done a lot of lecture tours of India. I remember in 2000, 2001, I'd already been to India about 6 times. And I remember praying to Lakshmi, Sri Lakshmi, please give me the money so I can keep going to India. And she never really gave me the money, but it was always somebody else that came forward to pay my way to go to India, which was just as good. And so then that was the first time I was paid for the ticket to go to India, and then given put on a lecture tour. And this was in 2000. Early 2000. And I'd never given lectures to an Indian audience before, so I was a little bit cautious about it. But then I really got into the swing of it. I really liked it, and the audience really liked it. And that was actually the first lecture tour. I was in a different town or village every day.
Wow.
And I was, the first lecture tour, I was with Subhash Kak, Professor Subhash Kak, which you must know.
Yes.
And so we traveled together, and it worked out really nice because he would give a lecture based on the scientific aspect of Vedic culture, which many people like that. And I would just give my heartfelt appreciation of Vedic culture and what it has done for me and stuff like that. And many people like that. So if the scientific aspect was too high for some people, then they would like my lecture. And,
Okay.
that kind of thing. So it kind of worked out well that way. And it was a good training episode. And so I've been, somehow or another, I've always been invited, or, the ticket was paid for or something like that, to come to India to speak at conferences or do other lecture tours, things like that. And also then later in 2000, I went on my first trip. I did 2 tours actually of Northeast India. And that's when I got a real good view as to how different cultures or even different religions were trying to take advantage of the indigenous people and of other Hindus in certain areas of India. And this was started in Northeast India. And so that also gave me the motivation to write other books, such as my book, Crimes Against India, and the need to protect its ancient Vedic tradition. And so this also gave me ideas as to how to present. And then I became more focused on reaching a Hindu and Indian audience at the time. For a while, I was mostly just writing for the Western audience. But then I was writing, and I found that my writing was being appreciated so much by other Indians that they would actually pay for me to come to India. So then many of my books started to be focused on reaching an Indian audience.
Lovely.
And not only in the means to protect the culture, but also in the means of having pride in their own culture.
Yes.
And so
really, Prabhuji, you really make us proud, and you really make us ashamed also at the same time, that what we don't know even a scratch of it. And in India, in metro cities like Mumbai, Delhi, it's out of the question that you find somebody on the street who would know even one verse from Bhagavad-Gita. They wouldn't even know how many shlokas are there in the Gita. So you really make us proud.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it very much, because sometimes you don't know. You're writing, because writing is kind of a lonely occupation. You're writing,
True.
you're putting this book together, you're putting it out there. And after that, you're not sure how well it's appreciated, who's being affected by it, how many people are even buying the book sometimes. But I was fortunate enough recently to see my book, Secret Teachings of the Vedas, in some of the airports of India. Some people were sending me pictures. Do you know your book is in the airport of Bangalore? No, I didn't know that. And somebody else came up with me and showed me a picture on their cell phone. This book is in the airport in Chennai or something. No, I didn't know that. So the book was getting out there. That was my first book, Secret Teachings of the Vedas, which was then eventually published by Jayco Publishing House in Mumbai.
Yeah.
And but the lecture tours, first when I started going to Assam, Arunachal Pradesh, Nagaland, places like that, it really gave me the insight to see how many different ways Hinduism as a culture is being challenged, or even trying to be reduced or exterminated in some places.
Right.
So then I felt more compelled to write certain articles and books that would hopefully propel Indians and Hindus in particular to protect their culture, stand up for their culture, and because it has so much to offer. And I've often said that if people realize how profound Vedic culture is, how deep it is, they would never go back to something that's more shallow or less comprehensive. And it's all a matter of just being able to understand what it has to offer. And fortunately, in some ways, I'll tell you though, I'll be honest about it. In some ways, many people say that, you were nothing more than a Hindu in your previous life.
Very true.
And now you're born in America simply to continue your mission of helping other Hindus to take their culture seriously. So if that's how that worked out, hey, it's great with me. And if the more people I can help, the more people I feel happy about.
Yes, Prabhuji, that is the reason I really appreciate your efforts, because I've seen you for last 20 years, and it's a long time that I've seen your writing style has changed, the way you have changed, and you have elaborated things, because I have read you 15 years back, and now also I do keep reading about your articles and other stuffs, whatever, wherever you publish, because I generally follow you on your social media as well. But Prabhuji, one thing I really wanted to ask you is, what is the change we need to bring about in Indian society so that we can come close to our scriptures, and how we can educate people out here? Because people like you who are doing wonderful job, but here the mindset is whatever is Western, whatever white thing is happening in white world is acceptable as their own, as something superior. So in that such scenario, what would you recommend, and how you would like us or others to progress? You are also my inspiration at the same time, so your wise words will help me as well.
Well, thank you very much. That was one of the reasons why I wrote Crimes Against India, to show how the culture is being challenged from years ago. That's why it's subtitled 1,000 Years of Attacks Against Hinduism and What to Do About It. Because after outlining historically how Indians and Hindus have been challenged for so many years by so many different invaders, the fourth section is what to do about it, the solutions of helping spread this information. And so about Vedic culture, the information about Vedic culture and the depth of the knowledge of it and what it has to offer. But people need to at least start studying, putting some effort into studying just Bhagavad-Gita, for example. Just really understand what Bhagavad-Gita has to offer. And And also, some people may not like to hear this, but some of the acharyas, some of the spiritual masters need to get out of their ashram and go out into the villages, out into the cities to begin explaining this knowledge to other people, so that they're not just sitting in their ashrams. I mean, some people do this, some acharyas do this, but it needs to be a group endeavor where the acharyas go out there and explain, have pandal programs in the villages and in the towns, and so people can come and participate, because Hinduism itself is a celebratory. It's celebratory, I should say. It's a way of celebrating our connection with God in so many different ways, whether it's through dance, whether it's through kirtan or bhajans, music, whether it's through plays, action oriented plays, cooking. Cooking itself is a form of expression where we make something and we can offer it to the deities or whatever, and then relish it by honoring it in the form of eating. There's so many different ways that we have that we can use as a connection with God, that other religions, they don't even think about it. So in our case, we have so many different ways and so many different means of connecting ourselves with God. Plus, don't forget, we have so many different tools to be able to utilize to reach our higher potential, whether it's through Ayurveda, making ourselves more healthy, whether it's Vastu, making our surrounding, our environment more healthy and more dynamic, whether it's Jyotish, whether it's Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Astanga Yoga, Jnana Yoga, all these different means of helping ourselves reach our higher potential. And they've been around for years, so it doesn't mean they don't work. They simply work. You just need to know how to apply it to your lives. So it has so much to offer that we should never take this for granted, and make sure that we understand it, utilize it, learn about it, and so that we can reach our highest potential, not just mentally, intellectually, healthily, but also spiritually. And there's no greater way of making this happen, because that was the whole idea for the Vedic tradition itself, to reach everybody, no matter where they are, and bring them up to progressively higher and higher levels of perception, of understanding, so no one's left out. I've often said, let no Hindu be left behind. So in the same way, Vedic culture is like that. Let no one be left behind. And one thing I have found that I want to say is that Hinduism or Vedic culture is not the problem within India. The problem with it is when people forget what it really is, when they forget or distance themselves from the real teachings of Vedic culture. Like casteism, for example. That's a typical example. I wrote one book called Casteism. Is it the scourge of Vedic culture, Hinduism, or is it the perversion of a legitimate Vedic system? We have to understand the difference between casteism and varnashram. Casteism, there's different histories of how that came into being, but the casteism based on one's birth, that is what you are and who you are for the rest of your life, is completely contradicted in the Vedic literature itself. And I've written about that. So that material is there. It's been documented, where anybody in the varnashram can adjust their situation, their varna, according to their proclivity, according to their intellectual development. You're not ever stuck in one caste or whatever, or one social designation. It is all based on how you can most easily and most efficiently contribute to the rest of society. That's what varnashram is. Casteism, as far as I've said, some people ask me, what do you think of casteism? As far as I'm concerned, throw it in the trash can. It doesn't belong. It's a perversion of a legitimate Vedic system. And that is one of the things that I've found, is that when I travel in India, Hinduism is not the problem. Vedic culture is not the problem. The problem is when we forget the true teachings of what the Vedic system has to offer. And that is what we should rekindle and remember all the time. And then
That's
we'll find
so lovely,
that
Prabhuji. The
it
way you have, yeah.
offers the solutions. It offers the solutions to many of the social problems that we have.
Yes, yes, and that's a wonderful suggestions you have given. Prabhuji, if somebody has asked one question, maybe we can just take one question because now we are running out of time. Reading the Indian scriptures text must be difficult. How did you learn to read it and understand the same?
Well, I have to admit, I've never actually learned Sanskrit. I've learned how to pronounce the Roman transliteration of it, but I always use the English translations of it, really. Of course, that's just a matter of trying to get the most accurate translation. But basically, I always depended on the English translation. Now, like in this book, the books by the Bhaktivedanta Book Trust, they have the Sanskrit of each verse, then the Roman transliteration, word for word translation, and then the complete English translation, and then also a purport so if you didn't understand it completely. So it's very easy to go from the Sanskrit to the English and see how it is translated, and then be able to understand it that way.
But then don't you think so at least one language is important to learn, as in if you had learned Hindi, it would have helped you, no?
Well, there's no doubt about it. there's no doubt about it. Many people ask me, well, have you learned Hindi? And quite honestly, I say that there's no excuse for me not knowing Hindi. But oftentimes when I travel around India so much that when I get to certain parts of India, I will say something in Hindi. Like if I'm in the South of India, I'll say something in Hindi and they just look at me like, what the hell are you saying? So oftentimes I've found, which has given me the reason why I never learned Hindi, is that the easiest common language to know in India is English.
True.
Because no matter where you go, even if I'm the only white guy on the bus, usually there's somebody on that bus that knows English.
True. Very
and that's happened before. It's like when I'm going from village to village on a bus through South India, away from the big cities and all that, I'll be the only white guy on the bus. And not that I care. They're all curious. They want to know. And so usually somebody comes forward and they know English. And
that is true. That is very true.
And,
we can get stuck. And reason lots of people like you who are curious to know India are coming to India on spiritual tours all around, and I understand that it's not very difficult anymore. You find some or other guy who knows English very well. So but then my reason of asking you whether it would have helped you in learning the scriptures. But anyway, Prabhuji, I think we had such a wonderful session. I just didn't realize where time flew because now it's already 50 minutes of our discussion, and it's so wonderful. I would like to go this endlessly, but of course our audience will get restless. So I would like the people out there who have joined me a little later that we have Stephen Knapp from Detroit with us. He is a Krishna devotee. He is an author of 50 books on Vedic culture. You will find this video on Hindu Scriptures page. It will be there for your later reference. And within few days, it will be available on our YouTube channel as well, Hindu Scriptures. Those who don't know why this series is happening is because I have written a book series called Hindu Culture and Lifestyle, and I've picked up few topics from there. And then I'm inviting people related to those topics. So today we learned about the importance of the Vedic scriptures from someone who is not born in India and who is not Hindu by birth, but he knows more than any of us, and he really put us in shame because it's so in one way, it is such a proud moment that someone like Stephen Knapp has learned so much about scriptures, and he knows so much, and he's practicing mainly that he's practicing this Hindu culture, because after all, as I've always been saying, that it is not about just knowing and putting that into the bookshelves. It is all about what you practice on a daily basis and how it changes you from inside. So Prabhuji has given such a wonderful explanation how it changed him from inside and also externally. And that is something which we all have to take it from this conversation and with this episode. I hope you will enjoy this whenever you watch it, because I've understood that a lot of people watch it later on, and because they are in different time zone and they see it as per their convenience, usually. So Prabhuji, last one words you would like to say with meaning, and we will close the session.
Well, the only thing I can say is I have to thank India. I have to thank the great sages of India, because quite honestly, without them, I'd probably be dead by now, quite honestly. But that is what has given me meaning in my life, purpose in my life. It has changed my life completely. I have a better understanding of why I originally, at 7 years old, said to myself that if there's any possible way, I don't want to come back here. I want, there's some reason for that. And it's all based on my exposure to the Indian Vedic culture that has given me this purpose, the answers to my questions, and the determination to show people how valuable it is. And so I have to thank you. I have to thank the Indian great sages and rishis for making this available, because it has made the biggest difference in my life. It has made the complete difference in my life compared to where I was going before this. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Prabhuji. I bow down to you. I want to touch your lotus feet, because you also have been my guru in some or other ways. As I explained, that I've read almost everything you have written at least 10 years back in that website, and you really inspire me. And that was the reason I wanted you to come and share your views with this endeavor, which I've just started, of inviting relevant people who share their views. And actually, I want my audience to take it more seriously, because this is not some of the regular lecture series which you listen and forget. The idea is to bring about change in their daily lives, everyday habits, in their being, in their mindset, in their doing, in every possible way. So in that context, you really, really inspire me.
Well, thank you very much. And if they do that, they will also find that their life becomes changed, becomes different. And in that respect, I have to admit, I have to thank my own guru, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, for coming from India to America to spread this, because he did not have to do that. He was already set up in Vrindavan. And it was only because of his own guru told him to preach in the English language, which is what I tried to follow in my own writing, for him to come to America and spread this, because without that, like I said, I have no idea where I would be.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. We'll have to do it again sometime.
Yes, definitely.